In 1 minute, you're going to hear the captivating, true story of a man who grew up in Harlem, New York. In spite of his being an incredibly talented artist, he had to go to the depths before finding what he says was his salvation. His mother preached in Christian churches and practiced magic and witchcraft at the same time, and his father was a high-ranking Mason. Michael ran away from home, had run-ins with the FBI and drug dealers. He spent time at Timothy Leary's LSD farm in upstate New York and ended up in the grips of Satan himself before his amazing transformation. Here in his own words is Michael's story.
Hey, my name is Michael Antinero, and I'm from Harlem, New York City. I was born and raised in our apartment. I was the last child of 10 children. We were the only white family in the neighborhood. My parents moved in when it was Irish, Scottish mixed, but because of their financial status and rent, the rent was the same, and it never increased, I guess, so we just stayed in Harlem. Had a tough childhood growing up because the kids in the neighborhood, there's a lot of peer pressure going on, you know, and we are ridiculed being white people. I had a lot of friends. I joined a gang called the Junior Warlords when I was 6th or 7th grade, and I had to make the tattoo myself. And it's right there. It's like a Nazi S, you know. Took a needle and go like this, and then take black India ink and rub it over it, then alcohol to sterilize it, and I'm now in the Junior Warlords, you know. And yeah, we never had a gang fight. We never had anything really. We were a joke. And I learned how to dance real good because I tell you, if anything, look at James Brown, look at Michael Jackson, you know. So that was it, but I had no self-esteem. My father, I only remember growing up with my grandmother taking care of us. My father was somewhere else with a woman. My mother and him, they were divorced, they separated, and she was in Brooklyn, and she called herself Evangelist Saint Helena because she preached in the ghetto type churches. These are what you call a storefront church, where there's an empty store and they whitewash the window with this white color, and inside everybody's dancing. If you see the Blues Brothers, how they're jumping around and dancing, hallelujah, like this, they're doing this in these smaller locations. And she's preaching, but she was the most wicked person that I knew. She was also, since she was Dutch West Indian, she came from a background of voodoo, witchcraft, or whatever. And she's preaching in churches all about God and following the Lord and stuff. But then, since I have a little bit of an artistic talent, she's telling me to make special maps where a person burns a candle, you put it here one day, here the next, up there, and like that, and it's going to bring you luck and fortune. She took these glass Catholic candles, and she would put a Star of David on top, scrape it in, put some glitter powder on top, and some maraschino cherry juice mixed with a little alcohol, and this was a blessed candle that she would sell for $15, or $5, I'm sorry. If it's not blessed, it's $2, something like that. She would wash your sins away in the bathtub for $15. She would read tea leaves and look at the way the leaves are in the cup after you drink the tea. You spin the cup around, look at the formation of the tea leaves in the bottom, and tell a fortune. She would read a crystal ball. She would analyze handwriting. She did all these kind of... If you ever saw the movie Ghost, with Whoopi Goldberg playing this spiritual advisor, that was like my mother. And I couldn't understand how she could mix the Bible and then do these things. And she had talismans that she would make A talisman is like a good luck charm that you wear in a pouch right by your heart, around your neck. And these are Kabbalah symbols, Hebraic symbols, little circles with a lot of writing inside. I would have to write them in red ink. It should be blood, but it's red ink only. And then they get sewed in a leather pouch. The person who buys it is never allowed to look at it, otherwise the spell is broken. And she wanted me to write things, copy the talisman, look at that and do it. And I would sometimes write for the inscription around in the circle, eat at Joe's Pizza Place, or something that was blasphemous against this. And nobody would know that. And she caused me not to believe in God. Yeah. Years later, after I finished high school, I went to the High School of Art and Design, where you learn art on a professional level. And I was studying cartooning and animation. I also studied advertising, photography, and the teachers were professionals. For example, my teacher for cartooning and animation, Dr. Charles Allen, he had 3 comic strips in the newspapers. He was awarded for making some of the best children books to read for kids, And Mr. Saltzman, who taught theater design, he did the whole Hollywood backdrops for Hello, Dolly when that was on Broadway. This is 1964 or something like this, 63. Dr. Elliskew, who taught me sculpturing, he's working on Steuben glass, crystals, and he refurbished the 2 lions that were outside of the New York Public Library. So all these guys were top people in their field. So you learned professional art in a high school level, and the graduates today, I know some of them, they are doing top high-end work in illustration. And so I got that under my belt, but I had a bad relationship with my father, and eventually I had to live with him. And my sister said to me that, would you like to come to Washington, D.C. with me and my husband and our 3 children to babysit until we get established on our feet? Her husband worked at Walter Reed Army Medical Base. She worked at the Veterans Administration Hospital in the dental department. So I said, yeah. And I stayed there until I was 18 years old, taking care of her kids. And one kid, Sonny, I think he was 3 years old, and then Ann was 5 years old, I think, and they were young. And I taught them how to walk, talk, everything. And one day my sister told me that the reason that she asked me to come down is she knew that I had a bad relationship with my father. My father never showed me love. He never showed me encouragement. I had emotional problems from my mother and my father's separated life and what my mother was doing, that I had a bedwetting problem until I was 16 years old in high school. Every night, it was horror, And I got cured of that because my older brother said, hey, if you're going to sleep with the girl, she can't wake up in a red, wet bed. And I stopped right away. I don't know why. Stopped. But I was emotionally torn apart. And in Washington, D.C., my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he's a dental technician in the Army. And he encouraged me to stick with my artwork, but he also encouraged me to join the Army, not to go to war, but they knew that I had no self-esteem. They knew that I had all these complexes. If it was Christmas, the family would get together with visitors, aunts and uncles. We're about maybe 12 people at the table or more. And somebody would say to my father, hey, does Michael still wet the bed? at the table. And he would say, yeah, we all have to wear life jackets at night when we go to sleep. And I'm sitting there. My father told me one time, you could not pour pee out of a boot even if the instructions was written on the heel of the boot. No encouragement, no nothing. And all this peer pressure from being in Harlem, white, and white men can't jump. So I learned to dance like crazy. It paid off in high school. I got girlfriends, and I was like a white James Brown, you might say. So I had that self-confidence down that I can dance. But that was it, nothing more. And then I joined the Army, and I'm going up to New York to say goodbye to my friends. I'm going in. And I go to see my father with my stepmother, and I'm sitting there, and he's so proud of me that I'm going into the Army, and we're watching the 7 o'clock news, and it's Vietnam, and he looks at his wife and says, you see that? Mike's going to be over there one day. And I'm like, really? Me? And I wanted to be a Green Beret. All to make my family proud of me. My brother Buddy was a Marine. My brother John was in the Army. So I'm in Greenwich Village saying goodbye to some friends, and a guy gives me one marijuana joint to try. Had it in my pocket. Me and my friend are going around the corner to see some girls in a dark alleyway. Ring the bell, no answer. A cop came around the corner. What are you doing here? Yada, yada, yada. And he said, if I toss you and find anything, you know. And he found the joint on me. So I was disqualified from the Army, was in jail overnight. And I phoned up my father when I got out. Hey, can you help me? I need to have a lawyer. But my father was a Freemason. He could have came with me to the court and gave a Masonic gesture to the judge, and he would say, don't do it again, young man. My father was master, past master, secretary, treasurer, you know. Quite elevated guy. When I talked to him on the phone and I told him that I got busted for the marijuana joint, he said, why did you have that? I said, somebody gave it to me and I thought to try to see what it's like. And he said to me, you're not my son anymore. And that was it. My mother gave me the money for a lawyer, and it was such a ridiculous case. The lawyer said, Your Honor, blah, 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 don't do it again, young man, and that was it. And my mother said, yeah, your father didn't want to go to court because he's a Mason. And yeah, I never saw my father again. Well, I never knew him anyway because I only lived with him for the last 2 years of my life, maybe, as a teenager. And so now I'm free in Greenwich Village, and I started taking LSD, and a lot of LSD. I didn't like marijuana or hashish or anything like that because I felt like a vegetable. Yeah, man, you know. But LSD, I was like, boom, 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 boom. I was alive and awakened. And my first LSD trip happened the same day that me, my friend George, and the rhythm guitarist in our band and his girlfriend, we all dropped LSD for the first time listening to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And I'm like, the lyrics that the Beatles had in there when I was on LSD was so alive. And we are up in a high apartment house, and the song Good Morning is on. Nothing to do to save his life. Call his wife in. I'm looking out the window and everything was going by so fast. It was perfect alignment with the song. And with George Harrison, he did it when he sang Within You, Without You, talking about life flows on within you and without you. People hide themselves behind a wall of illusion, and I'm looking at the cover of it, and I see all these people in back of the Beatles living in their illusions. and they never glimpse the truth until it's far too late. And he says, we're talking about the love that's gone so cold, the people that gain the world and lose their soul. And I'm like, he said, they don't know, they can't see. Are you one of them? And I thought, holy crap. And that's when I discovered God, to a point. I met my mother, told her that I believe in God, but not the way that she did it, and I became a holy man. My first influence teacher was a guy named Hugh Romney, better known as Wavy Gravy. You can see him in Woodstock. He's got the cowboy hat on with the unicorn horn, and he's walking around. I was stoned on acid, and he looked at me. We're walking in Park Avenue, and he says, "Are you there yet?" I go, "Yeah." "You there?" I go, "Yeah." And he takes out of his pocket a little book, Metaphysical Meditations by Sri Aurobindo, and he gives it to me. And I hung out with a lot of psychedelic people that were into the other way of life, more enlightened than the systematic robots, you know. And that was my trip. I started to try to discover God, to find God within myself. There was books like The Doors of Perception from Aldous Huxley, you know, Brave New Worlds, and I read the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and all these other ways of finding God. Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms, How to Know God. And it helped me to cover over my low self-esteem. The dancing, I was a hit. I got tons of friends, you know, and now I'm discovering spirituality. The FBI is now looking for me because I was disqualified from joining the Army, but there was a man named Timothy Leary who had a big farm in Millbrook, New York, that was a big farm area, and he was given a big house, and he had a thing called the League for Spiritual Discovery, LSD. He was like the spokesman and the guru of LSD, taking this drug. He would say, turn on, tune in, drop out. And so Hugh Romney and this other community called the Group Image, the Third World Raspberry, we all got together at Millbrook, New York to make a movie called Home on the Range. You know, there's a cowboy song, Home on the Range. This one is called Home on the Range. And almost every day we're dropping LSD like crazy. That evening, a girl, her name I think was Faith, another girl who was a singer, a Mexican boy, and another girl, they came from this church that they called the Lighthouse, and I didn't know anything about it, but they came in, and the girl started singing a song about Jesus, and my friend Terry, who wants to make this Sergeant Pepper type church, I couldn't believe it. He started pulling his hair and jumping up and down on his bed, pulling his hair. Take this Jesus out of here. Shut up singing about God, whatever. And he looked at me and said, Mike's got a song about God. Sing him your song, Mike. And I sang them the song. And this girl, Faith, came over to me, and she sat down, and she said, your song is really correct, except for one thing. You sang, Jesus Christ was nothing but a natural man who knew better than to sin. He was the Son of God, and he did no sin. And I was like, really overcome by the way she was talking. She wasn't trying to convert me. She wasn't trying to pull me into a church. She was just caring for my own soul, my own heart and mind, and my own situation. And these other guys, they started talking to the Mexican guy, Miguel, I think his name was, and Miguel was upset with them. And he said, don't tell me about LSD. My brother overdosed or did something, and now he's a nut in the head. And he was pretty hard on these guys that were opposing us. But he kept them at bay so that the girl can talk to me. And what happened was she said, have you ever thought about letting Jesus into your life? Because, oh, I'm sorry, before this happened, I was in a car accident, and I'm God. I was working for a Republic movie company. They wanted to chop down long tree poles to make teepees for this cowboy movie. So we had it on a hitch, U-Haul hitch or something like that, all these poles hanging out in a Jeep, and we all had to sit on where the hitch is, because otherwise it would jackknife. The poles were longer than what the carriage could hold. And lo and behold, we're driving and it started jackknifing, and then bam, and I saw myself fly out of the car, land on the ground. I could see it all. And I scratched up my knees very badly, and I was afraid to go. I was afraid to go, and I stood up and I started to say what was going to happen. The car's going to come, it's going to pick them up, he's going to kick the van and curse at the van because the Jeep, because it jackknifed. And I started seeing things a little bit in advance before they happened. But I knew that I was afraid to go, and I was God. John Lennon told me so. I am he as you are me, and we are all together. The Beatles were the Bible, the four apostles we called them. And that shook me up. And that night I stayed at a house in Tucson, and I took two, I think we called them blue double dome tabs of acid. And I started going on this very big acid trip. And I looked at the posters of all the different rock stars on the wall. All of a sudden, little hairs were standing up. They've been there all the time, but they were more pronounced on the LSD. And I was in the room, who am I? What am I? And I started to sound like a wolfman. I was like, ah! And are you okay, Jake? Are you hurt? You know, they call me Jake the Snake. I don't know why. But I was Jake the Snake, you know. And I said, am I in pain? Physical pain? And I smashed all the sores on my knee, blood coming out. And I said, no, I'm not in physical pain, I'm in spiritual pain. Who am I? Who are you? If I killed you right now, where would you be? What would you go to? What are you? You know, and it was like really traumatic. And somehow I lasted out the whole night. And then I went back out to the house, hitchhiked out, and then came this visiting, and so the young lady, she asked me about, would you like to receive Jesus? No, she didn't say that. She just said, have you ever thought about receiving Jesus? She didn't push anything. And I said, do you mean to let him take over the controls in my life? And she said, yeah. And I closed my eyes, and I heard in my head the still small voice in my head say, I'm afraid to. And I looked at her and I said, I don't know. I don't know, and I ever think about that. And then I heard the Jefferson Airplane in my head as clear as day sing, well, you can fool your friends about the way it ends, but you can't fool yourself. And I said, oh God, I'm lying to myself now. I'm only BSing myself. And she said, well, if you ever want to know, we are at the Lighthouse Church. You can always come by and visit us, and we can talk more about it. And I was like, oh, damn, what did you just do? You lied to her, and you're lying to yourself. And the Mexican guy, Miguel, he came and walked over to me and he said, brother, we didn't come here for anybody else but you. was upset because these guys were arguing with him and cursing at him and talking about pepperland or whatever, and he was upset and hurt because his brother took so much LSD he never came back. I had a friend like that too. He never came back down from the trip. And I saw him in the worst state I ever seen anybody. I had friends in New York City, took LSD, thought he could fly, jumped off the roof. And I was shocked when he said that. And he said, and we're going to get you. And they left. And then everybody's like, oh, those goddamn, Jesus, fuck that. And they just, And I'm sitting there stunned. And a week later, this girl, Julie, came to the house, and she's having sex with Spriggy, the seventh son of Satan, in the back room. Terry Gorman is on the bed still talking about his Pepperland church. I said, Terry, can you cut all this crap out? I don't want to hear it. You're talking about something that's never going to happen and stuff. And then this guy, Jeff, that lived with us, his name was Jeff, I forgot. Not the same Jeff from New York. He came running in and started grabbing his bags and stuff. And I said, hey, Jeff, where you going? And Miguel walked in, the Mexican guy. And he looked at Terry on the bed and he said, you're the devil. Terry freaked out again, pulling his hair. I mean, he had a big afro anyway, but he was a white guy with a mustache and trying to look like Hendrix, I guess. And he's pulling his hair and jumping up. And he's cursing at this guy, get him out of here. And he looked at Julie, who just came out the back from having sex with Spriggy. And he looked at her and he said, and you give your body to men, you idolatress. And she starts freaking out, who is this guy? Boom, boom, boom. And he looked at me and he said, and you're a fool for living here when you know better. You need to get up and get out of here. And I always believed life was a movie and we're going page by the script. So I looked at him and I said, hey, I don't know if it's in the script for me to ask you this or not, but can I come with you guys? And he said, get up, get out of bed, and let's go. And I felt an electric ripple go through my whole body. Like you see these guys have a ray of lightning around them or something. It goes bzzz. And it's like 1,000 pounds of a backpack fell off my back. And I looked at Terry and I said, Terry, you got to face it. You are the devil. And Julie, you screw everybody that does come in the house. And me, I'm an idiot for staying here. I'm going. And I left, and I was laughing all the way to the church. And they had some trailers or caravans, whatever you call them, in the back, set out on the land, and it was full of, not full, but I'd say about maybe 10 people sleeping in different ones, and they were all part of this new movement in the church of hippies coming to Tucson. And I stayed in there, and I couldn't go back. I said, this is it. I'm not going to fool myself. I got to find out about Jesus, who he is, learn about Jesus, and follow Jesus. And I did make one big mistake. The mistake I made was that I wanted to take one more trip on LSD with Jesus. And I told the people in the church, I said, I'll be back tomorrow, but I want to have a trip with Jesus. And the girl Faith, who talked to me initially, she said, you're going to have a horrible trip. It's not going to work. I said, look, I have Jesus and LSD, what a combination or whatever. And I left in the evening, and I went to Danny and his brother, I forget his name, and they were drug dealers. Danny had hepatitis from taking too much heroin, and his brother, I forget his name. Anyway, they were both at the house, and they gave me a tab of acid, and I got my LSD free for some reason. And I told them all about Jesus, and they started laughing at me and mocking me. And they say, oh, you believe in Yahweh, and you believe in this and that and stuff, and they were just really poking fun at me. Really, they weren't doing it aggressively, but just funny. Oh, what would Jesus say if you did this and that? Just really ridicule. And I was getting upset at them. And so they went to bed, and I'm listening to music on LSD, and they had a big writing pad, like that. A writing block, whatever you call it in Europe, it's a writing block. That thick amount of paper on it, yellow with the lines in it. So I was going to pack up and leave and go back in the middle of the night, and I started to write to them, very nice, how can you make fun of God? How can you make fun of Jesus? You are the devil. And this voice said, so are you, pal. And I said, no, I'm not. I believe in Jesus. And I really could not write Jesus anymore. My hand was totally blocked. It was like writing Jesus with my left hand. And then I said, no. And then I wrote Satan or the devil, and it was so eloquently written. And I freaked. I took another piece of paper, and I had a 4-hour battle with the devil on paper. Every time when I wrote Jesus' name or God, my hand cramped up and I couldn't write it. It was like shaky. And then, and I just, oh God, what has happened to me? What is going on with me? It was the most horrible trip in the world. And it ended early in the morning. The daylight's coming up. And I got up to go back to the church. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't even remember how I got there and, to get back there. And I'm in the street and I'm crying that I had done this. And it's, 6 o'clock in the morning. And this girl that I knew, who was a crippled girl, and she has a car built so that she can drive it, she saw me walking and she stopped and picked me up. Because she saw that I was walking at 6. Where you going? And I said, I'm going to go back to the church. And she drove me back to the church. And no, I think it was about 8 o'clock maybe, because people were there and alive and cooking. And I just walked in crying and crying and crying. And they just told me how much the Lord forgave me or forgives me for doing this. It wasn't such a big sin, but it was like a foolish mistake, and that I need to let it go. You didn't do anything super bad, but it showed me the battle of the spirit world, the battle between God and the devil. And it was so prominent, alive, when I was writing that letter to them. I left it at the house, but I used up practically the whole writing pad. It came down to, I am not the devil, I belong to Jesus, and I couldn't write it. Every time when I try to write it, and I would say something against the devil, I could write that out, but as soon as I say, I want Jesus, my hand cramps up and it's shaking like this, and I couldn't write it out. I never was so freaked out in my entire life. And that's when I decided to stay with this church, and it was a time about the big Jesus movement in America. On Time magazine, there was a whole big, there was a big picture of Jesus, psychedelically painted, like how this artist Peter Max would do it, and it said, I think it said the Jesus Revolution or something like that. And there was the Jesus people and other groups, the God Squad or whatever, and that's what I joined. And I stayed with different groups, and I didn't go back. And that was in 1969.
Thanks for watching. If you have any comments about anything that Michael said in this program, please leave your comments below. And thank you for subscribing to our channel. If you have your own personal story about an encounter that you had with God or Jesus, and you'd like us to share it on this channel, we'd really like to hear from you.